Hi, can you hear me? So, welcome to this Q&A session live, and thanks for attending my course on the Embarcadero Academy Delphi Community Edition Bootcamp course. I've seen some questions already, and so I think you enjoyed my course. I hope so. It was a quite bright topic, so many topics could go inside this course, but obviously there will be some other courses to get a deep dive into some other topics, specific topics. So feel free to ask if you have something you prefer for me to cover. So let's start with some of your questions. And I can see on the Q&A page of the community that somebody was looking to a way to change the icon of the application. And well, there are several things to know about that, because let's start with a blank application. Can you see my Delphi? Let me move this window to another screen so I can check if you can actually see my desktop. I hope you're seeing my Delphi installation, and yes, this is a FireMonkey application, and you can see that in the project options, there's an entry that is about the application, where you can customize the icons and the logo for the Windows platform package. And obviously, there's a combo box in the top of this ID window, and you can select the platform, a combination between platform and configuration, and provide graphics for each target platform. So you have the launcher icon for Android as the first entry if you select the Android platform up there, as well as graphics for the iOS applications, including the icon and the launch images used for the initial splash screen and so on. So you have actually to produce a number of graphic resources to support especially mobile platforms. There's a tool I've seen that may help you a lot, because you can provide a high resolution logo of your application, and this tool will provide you a number of variations in size and resolution of your initial image to match all the requirements, because you actually have to provide each one of them. And once you have finished here, you will start again when you will be going when you will be publishing your application on mobile stores. So that's the way you change the icon of your application. Another question I saw was about how to set up the environment to provide mobile development or OS X development. And I can spot Ian Barker in the chat, and he's the instructor of the next week. And I'm pretty sure he will cover some of these topics about how to set up your development machine. But basically, yes, as somebody guessed, I have a MacBook Pro. I use virtual machine software, VMware, and I have several Windows machines, and I use them to develop in Delphi on those virtual machines, and then target OS X platform or iOS platform through the platform assistant. That is basically a software provided by Embarcadero that will bridge the two worlds, the Delphi IDE and the target the target platforms, let's say tools and so on. So Ian is confirming that he will cover that argument. So register, you're basically already registered and follow his course and he will provide you some more information about that. So, well, I see other question here in the chat log, and well, somebody is asking, Joe is asking how to create custom visual controls. If you refer to the FireMonkey framework, this basically means you have to implement a component and then provide a style. There are several ways to embed the style into the component resources, or you may even let the final developer provide a style for your component. It is quite an advanced topic. Basically, you will have to have a contract between your Pascal code and the style, and this contract is mostly made by a naming convention thing. So if you are implementing, let's say, a button and you have an entry in the style that is, let's say, a rectangle that is implementing the background, you have to provide a name for that rectangle, a style name for the rectangle, and you have a way to refer to that object in your Pascal code of your component, looking up using a method that is find style resource that will look up by name in the current style, grab a reference to the actual rectangle, and then you can do some assumption on based mostly on the type, or let's say you can assume it's a shape, so has a fill property, and you may want to change the background color and things like that. It's quite an advanced topic, and well, on my blog, I have a technical blog on Delphi. If I remember correctly, there was an article about building a Gmail-like label in FireMonkey, and it's well, it's in Italian, but I hope Google can translate for you most of the content. And there should be all the steps to include the style book. I think it was XC5 times, so something may have changed in the middle. But I think the base concept is still apply. So you can see my component actually implemented over several platforms, including Android ones and so on. So let me check. Okay, so another question was about how to change the color of standard button through the color palette. Well, this actually depends on the style you are using. So if you drop a button on your form and we are using the Windows style, there's not much you can do to customize a standard Windows button. For you set the color, you have to edit the style, and you can see that the background object is implemented through a T-button style object that will grab a portion of the image that is actually implementing the Windows style. And let me zoom out a second. This is the bitmap that this style is using to provide visual elements for your components on the Windows platform. It's a bitmap style. So you can, for example, grab this selection rectangle and let me zoom in a second. Change the coordinates and the extent of this selection. I will match this green rectangle here. And so this portion of the bitmap will be used as the background of buttons in my application. So I'm using here a capability that is built in FireMonkey. So I'm basically editing the platform style provided by Embarcadero to change the portion of the bitmap in my used as my background. It's a different story if you, for example, switch to the Android platform, because the style, the Android platform style provided by Embarcadero is actually tint enabled. So we can have a look at the default style of the button on the Android platform, and you can see that the background item is implemented through a tinted button style object that is again a kind of bitmap based style, but there's a property named tint color that you can change to have a colored button easily without customizing the style. So that's another option. So you basically can do different things according to the style you're actually using on each platform. So let me check some other question. There's a question here. How can I add custom style lookup? Well, let me see if I can get what you mean. Well, let me check. A style lookup is actually a way to, let's say, my layout or my rectangle. Well, the rectangle is a shape, so it is not a styled component. Let me check. I can use a button. So how can I add another entry here in the style lookup? So there's a convention about naming, and the entries here basically matches the button name, but it's not mandatory to have your entry listed there. You can simply add a style book, and let's say we can start from scratch and implement a new style object for the button, or we may ask the IDE to copy the platform style and provide a new one for us. The IDE will give a unique name to the style, and you can change that to, let's say, Andrea button. And just to make sure this is different from others, I will again change the normal color, the normal link of my button, and I'm matching this other portion of the bitmap this time. Well, doesn't really matter. It's different. So now if you close the style designer and you apply the changes, if you select the form and hook up your style book, well, it's already set as a style book property of your form, you can select the button. Let me add another button. And change the style lookup property to Andrea button that is now listed basically because it matches the name. So now I have my two buttons, and the first one is using the standard button style from the Windows platform style provided by Embarcadero, and this one is a copy of that definition where I basically changed the portion of the bitmap used to render the button when it is in a normal state. So the mouse, the focus isn't there, it is not pressed, and things like that. So let me see if there are some other questions. Well, let me say a thing that FireMonkey is actually a very powerful framework, and you can do a lot of things through styles. You can achieve a number of even complex visual functionalities, and you can build up your components by customizing styles and so on. There are a number of styles out there, some provided by Embarcadero, and you can find them in your installation folder. Well, it's in my public folder under the Embarcadero folder studio, and the number of the version of Delphi. There's a folder named styles, and you can actually find a lot of styles there. Some are targeting and mobile platforms. Some other are a bit more general. So that's quite powerful, and it's a very good starting point if you want to learn something more about about FireMonkey styles. You can have a look inside these styles and learn a lot of things. So some other questions? I can't see the let me refresh the chat window. There are a number of things I'd like to show you while waiting for you to add some other questions for me. And basically, I'd like you to have a look at my website. You can find some information about me, some links to my blog, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. I won't be posting emails so often, so there's no worries about spam. If you have some time or want to get some experience with Delphi, and you'd like to work in Italy or the nearby, I'm collecting candidates for works, because I have a number of customers, and sometimes they are asking me for more than my time allow. Well, there's a new question about frames. Is it true that you cannot use a frame on a form that is targeting different device resolutions? Well, I would say that this is false, but there's something we can check together, and I think you are referring to the Fire UI technology. And well, I didn't cover frames in my course. I have a component on GitHub that is open source, that is the T-Frames 10, that is about frames, and I really like to use frames, especially on mobile platforms, and in FireMonkey, of course. So the IDE Visual Designer, Form Designer, can apply styles to, let me add some components so we can actually see something. Well, checkbox would do. So the Visual Form Designer is capable to switch from one style to the other. You can in the Delphi IDE. And the Fire UI technology is capable to provide you specific version of a form targeting a specific combination between the device class and the platform one. You can add frames. So you can simply add a new frame to our, you have to select Delphi files in the new items dialog, select FireMonkey frame, and you will have a new frame. I will add a rectangle here. I will try to align it in order to cover all the area of the frame, and I will change the color just to make it more visible. So this is my frame. And what I want to do is to use this frame on my form. I can switch back to Windows for a second. Let me add the frame here. So I can now switch through styles. Well, maybe it's better if I add also some components on my frame. So let me drop the button inside the rectangle and align the button in the middle. So now you can see my Windows form showing my frame with my button there. And as you can see, as I'm switching the style, you can see the frame is changing the style as well. So what's true is that the IDE doesn't have specific support for style changing at design time, and you can't actually provide a different version of a frame for a specific Fire UI view. But what you can do is have the frame as you have the master view of your UI, and then create a descendant view, let's say for the Android 5 phone, and the frame will be more or less. Let me select the frame. I can align it to the bottom. That's my frame that is inside my Android 5 smartphone specific view of my Fire UI technology. And if I switch back to the, let's say, Windows one, my frame is there without any clue. So you can actually use frames and Fire UI together by simply treating the frame as it is a component. So I hope I answered your question, Roland. So there's another question here about in a T-tab control, how can transparent image in a T-tab item dynamic? Excuse me, Azrael, can you specify a bit more? Because I can have a T-tab control. Let me start with a blank application. So you're basically saying I have a T-tab. I can add some items. And how can transparent image in a T-tab item dynamic? I think I got that. No, I didn't. I can get the question. So please specify a bit more, and I will try to get back to the question. So if there's some other question, well, how can I add image and text in the text header in T-tab item? Well, I never done this myself, but I would say that we should try to edit the custom style. You will get a tab item style, so you can spot there's a glyph style. So basically, let me step back a second. If we add some images here, so let me drop an image list and let's say add an image from my, well, this one looks nice. I'm adding an actual image here, sorry. So now I have an image in my image list, and I guess I can bind my tab control to this image list, and then you should look for an image index property on the tab item, and it is now showing the image on the tab item itself. Your question was something like, how can I add image and text in the text header in the tab item? So I'm assuming you want some more text. So I will try to edit a custom style and try to, let me check a second how this style is implemented. There's a T-tab style object that will provide a bitmap portion for the tab item in different states. And I think we can add something over. So here's the text. So I'm going to use this T layout that is named bottom, and I'm adding a T text here. I will call it. Always remember to provide a style name. I will add something like additional text. So I can align this to the top, provide a smaller height, possibly not too small. Well, the text element is aligned, so I'm going to do another thing in order not to mess up everything. So I'm adding a layout on top of everything. This layout will be aligned contents. I will drag my additional text into the layout style. So now I think I can have, let me switch off the test property. And I think now I can have my additional text here. It's way too big, so I'm going to reduce it a bit. Well, I can't actually think you will be able to see everything, but basically I'm reducing the font size in order to match the available space in the tab item. And I will vertically align this text to the leading part and horizontally to the trailing part. So I want my additional text, to be in the upper right corner of my tab item. Please note I've given this element this style name, so it's additional text. And if I save my style, well, you can see the ID added the style book, that the form should be hooked up to that style book, and that my tab item 2 now has a style lookup property set to tab item 2 style 1, that is the unique name, the ID provided for my customized style. And you actually may be wondering how can I set the text. I will add a button, and I think I can do something like this. As I said before, I'm accessing the style object by name, and I'm looking for additional text element. Well, let me. I know that it is a t-text object, because I actually don't have the unit included, but if I drop a t-text on my form, this will be solved, and I can later drop it. So there's an overloaded version of the find style resource method that will provide me a reference to this t-text, if any. So now I can write some code like if I remember correctly, it is going to return a Boolean value. Let me, I really think so, but we will see. So if I actually found an additional text element into the style object tied to the tab item 2 control, I will have a reference variable here. Let me declare the variable. And I should be able to set the text property of this text object to the typical hello world text. So I'm clicking the button and nothing's seen. So I have made something wrong, or maybe my text is not visible over the current style. I have to check a second. I will get back this example for you. Never done this before, so I guess that the style is actually painting something over my text. So that can be an option. Let me try to move this layout style over and move this to the should be better now. I can actually see it in the style designer, and I think it should be showing the text. Let me check if I forgot something here. Let me add the breakpoint. So it's just became a live debug session. I'm actually in my if block. My text is visible. Let me check the position, and if I messed up something with alignment, I'm not sure. Maybe I wrote too much text. No. I would expect my text to show up here, but I will have to check back, and I'll be back with an example. That should be the mechanism. I'm clearly missing something right now, but I will check back. So let me go through another question. Can you use a checkbox or a drop-down list within a grid or a list box? Let me save this project for later, so I will try to make it working. So this is T-tab item customization. Well, if you have a list box, it should be immediate to drop another component inside an item of the list. So you can add list box items. And you can use a checkbox or a drop-down list within a list box. Well, so you can make some room for your checkbox and your other controls into these items. And yes, you can add a checkbox. You may probably want to align it right in order to always be properly aligned within the item. And the drop down, let me use a combo box. So again, to use a combo box, I would probably drop a T layout inside my item 2 and align this to the right, give it a proper sizing, and then put the combo box inside the layout with some alignment, let's say center. And so you can actually provide the width you may like and so on. You can add some items. and so on. And if you run your application, you should be able to work with them quite easily. Obviously, you have to deal with the fact that your components may be interfering somehow with the touch experience of your user. There are a number of things you can do, including temporarily switching off the hit test property of your children components inside a listbox item, and so on. And the same applies to the scrolling thing. So if I have my items a bit more bigger and my list box is actually scrolling, you have to deal with the fact that if the user clicks on the combo box, it's unlikely that he will have a chance to scroll the list box. But if you provide some space, some additional space, the user will find out the way to do that. For the grids, the fact is a bit different. You can add, let's say, add a string grid. Let me add some columns. I will add some columns here, and well, there's a collection. Okay. I think there's a way to provide a custom control to respond to the, well, you can obviously implement a custom style for the grid items that are basically the columns themselves. As when you select here that you want a new string column, what you are basically doing is to select a class that will implement some behavior and that will have an associated style. So you can delve a bit into the grids and try to register a new column kind. And well, again, it's not really a trivial task, but I think it should be possible without. Well, let me check. Ian is. Yes, there's a grid demo example. I'm not sure if it also includes the fact to have a custom control inside the cells of the grid. If you are using FairMonkey to target mobile platform, grids aren't really the first component you should think about. Lists are way better. For short lists, use a list box. For longer lists, use list views. And you can think about providing a user experience based on list. That basically means you can have the list to select an item and then have some panel or some additional piece of your UI sliding in and provide the user a place where to actually have standard controls and things like that. Let me check if I skipped something. Okay. Okay. Use the progress bar in the Android platform. Well, shouldn't be hard to do. You can switch to the Android. What's wrong with the progress bar? Obviously, the progress bar is stylized, so you can. There should be a value property, so I can set it to, let's say, 33, and the progress bar is actually stylized. So this style implement the progress bar this way. If you switch to another style, so let me hook up the form to this style book and load a different style here. Let's say an Android dark theme. You can look up for the progress bar entry somewhere here. Well, because I think it does the implementation for both vertical and horizontal one. And you can see I think it changed slightly because the color seems different to me, and that's it. So I don't know if I answered your question, Rafael, but you should be able to use progress bar as in all other platforms. It is possible to align the header of grid separately, center, and all grid text aligned to leading. So let me check if I can switch back to the grid. I'm not sure about this question. Probably not. Let me check. I will add a data set. We'll try to use some data and data binding. So I'm using the employee data set. Let me try to bind it visually. I'm using this to this grid. And the question was if there's a way to align the content of the grid, let's say leading, and the title differently. I think no. You have to. I think it's not possible. Not some, at least as far as I know. I would say no. I don't know. Because you can actually change this is the text settings for the whole grid. You may want to change the column. If you change the column style for the column, it is providing the actual behavior for text alignment. So again, I suppose I would say that it depends on the column style that is used. And as far as I know, you can register and add entries to this list. So you probably may want to try to build your own one and check if you can actually differentiate text alignment across the header and the actual content. But again, so far I would say this and probably try to do that myself later, something like that. So let me check also if there's some other question. I don't know if you are using the YouTube or the Academy page. There's a question here from Victor. Using Delphi 10.2.3 mobile control sample that can change the target to iOS 64-bit. Choose style books on it. Double click on the first and load the iOS jet style. The form gets dark. Then double click on the iOS Sterling style. Then I put a button on the form and I click it tight. Okay, so you're trying to switch from one style to the other. Finally, I compare it to my iPad. The form shows dark. Clicking on the button changes the style, but not for all components. The background stays dark. I aborted the app and changed the style to the form stylebook 2 and the form completely from dark to white light gray, including the background. Show all white. Clicking on the button changed to the style to dark, but again the background stayed white. So conclusion, the background is not affected by a change of state. Stays at the start of the app. Do you know? Okay. Well, if I can get your question, well, I should check the mobile controls example. What I can say is that it it's up to the specific style of each component to implement a solid background, and some components actually are not using. So let me make an example. You can add a list view here, and it will probably, well, no, it's behaving differently because it's a different style. So let me check a second, because I had I tried another style, I think a couple of days ago, and I think it was the golden graphite one. And well, this is an example. So it is up to the current style, to the actual style implementation, to provide every visual aspect for every component. So you may, for example, ask yourself why this dark theme doesn't provide a dark background for a list view, but that's up to the style designer. What you can do is to actually customize the list view style. Well, didn't end well. So let me try again. Cannot find style resource for, well, probably this style doesn't have an entry for the Android one. Let me check to customize a custom one. Not really. No way. Let me check this way. So let me do a step back. So if I drop my style book, let me drop my style book and start a new one, hook my form to my style book, and reload my golden graphite style. So now we have this style implementing this darkish theme on the Windows style, and we can customize the style for the list view. So we now have an entry for the list view. We can look up for the background item and switch this one from white to something a bit darker. I will use a dark blue. And well, you actually can't see that because let me check if the reason, but it's probably because let me check if the style lookup is actually set. Well, no, so this might be the reason. Otherwise, it is because you are not actually seeing the background now, but you are actually looking at the items. So we can have to look for the item background and change that. Let me check. Let me use this teal color. And we can now see that our list view now has a different style. Well, where's my style? When I selected the edit custom style entry from the ID pop-up menu, you can deal with this situation by saving the style to the disk and merge it manually. I've done this before, but it's way beyond. You can actually do that. You can save this style. So my list view style, and you can have a look. But well, the style designer needs some love. Well, so okay, that's the demo effect. Let me terminate it. I should have my file here, and we can have a look. This is actually the definition for my list view style, and I can I will have to reopen the Delphi IDE, load the style again, and merge it manually to my. Ah, well, I think I can even do this thing manually here and select the list view entry, look for my golden graphite file. Better to make a copy. Open it with my text editor. I will copy the list view entry because it actually shouldn't be there. This view is missing. So I'm going to add it. Doesn't really matter where. I simply have to spot the should be here. But let me try to add this here. And we should be able now to, yes. So I don't know what I recovered, but so let me go back to having a button, style book. Let me load my style. Let me check if there's my list view entry. No, so probably I put that into the wrong part. Let me check back again. Well, you should be able to merge, properly merge these two styles. I probably nested it inside another component. So we'll try to add this in the end. Let me check. And I will give up. Let me see if my list view is there. No, it's not showing there. I don't know, but there should be a way to merge two styles in a textual way. It's easier, and then you should be able to have your golden graphite style loaded and provide a custom version for the list view component. So it shouldn't be that hard by probably missing something. List view here, and let me customize the style. Maybe this time will be better because it's actually a matter of timing. Where I have loaded the style at first, and then now I've added a custom style, so it should go better than before. And I simply have to provide now some elements for my list view. So I'm going to load my data set and back. And bind it visually to my list view. So that's it. So basically, I merged the base golden graphite style with another element. I defined it myself, and this is the actual result. So I hope I've answered the question. Okay, so this should, I think that's enough for this. Let me check if there are some other question somewhere. So Victor is adding something here, but when the app starts, the background is dark as it should. It's not color after the change of style. It is not. Okay. So you are changing the style and you are not getting it completely refreshed. Well, there should be a way to invalidate the form and ask for a general repaint of the form. But yes, generally. Switching the styles can lead to some glitches, and you will probably need to force the form repaint in some way. If you can reproduce it, send me a test project and I will have a better look. So there's another question here by Arun. In a mobile application, I want to have multiple forms. Okay, it's not really something I would go at first. For men with buttons, and when I want to show form 1, there's a possibility the button form to show another form, let's say form 11. So if I want to do this, it's okay to call just form 1. The form 1 is active behind. Is this a good practice? Okay, the question is about having multiple forms into a mobile application. And this is basically the reason I wrote the T-frame stand component, because it's obviously very you will get up a lot of situation where you will end up having multiple views into your mobile applications, and the application itself can be seen kind of a state machine switching from one view to the other. Let's say I want to select something from a dataset here, and once selected, switch my user to the new view and show some details and so on. Kind of a template application, wizard application style, kind of. Many mobile applications are actually built that way. So, well, what I would do is to have multiple frames implementing the views, have a single main form, and then try to orchestrate the frames into the main form, especially because you will probably need some common controls across all your views. Let's say the hamburger icon with a menu or a toolbar or some other elements that should always be there. And so this is way easier to have a single main form that can have a layout as a container for the main content that can be a frame, and you can easily create dynamically your frames and align them inside this main content layout and switch these frames at your will, and even have a good control over resource usage, because you can decide whether or not to free your frames once you have done with them. So I would use frames. If you are interested, have a look at the frame stand component. There are a number of resources where you can learn the frame stand code on GitHub. I think the most significant one is a session I gave at the Code Rage 10 that will show you all the basic functionalities of this component. That has been evolved since Code Rage 10, but the base functionality is still the same. So that's how I would do how I would implement a mobile application with multiple views in Delphi today. There's another option that is actually to have a tab control on your form and use these tabs as views. But there's a drawback, basically, because you will end up having all controls of your whole application on a single component, that is the tab control itself. And things like live bindings and data binding in general can get a bit difficult to handle if you have many controls over a single form. And this has always been true, even when developing desktop application, not to have too many components on the same form at the same time, even if they are not visible. I would try to avoid that because it's hard to maintain. Split your UI into views using frames. Okay, let me refresh the page to see if something else is going on, or let me check the other chat on the YouTube video. Well, so it seems if there's some other questions, feel free to ask. Let me spend a word about. I'm actually writing a book about FireMonkey, and this is the link is with the packet publishing. It will be ready. I'm a bit late. I'm sorry, but I'm actually trying to write a comprehensive book about FireMonkey, including some of the technologies I showcased into the Delphi Community Edition Bootcamp. So they're actually giving some promotions now and then. So feel free to have a look at it if you can be interested into a FireMonkey book. Well, I think we have finished with questions. If there are some others, hurry up a bit. I'm really interested into your feedback about my training course in general and my activities, my open source project. I'm the author also of a REST library for Delphi. And feel free to have a look. And there's another question, but Roland doesn't seem like a frame can have different layouts based on device. Well, as I said, the Fire UI technologies aren't evident on the frame designer, are actually disabled, but you can have a frame, treat it as it is a master view of the frame, then have instances on the forms and customize them using views and Fire UI technology on the forms. As we have spoke a second about T-frame stand, and as this is actually a relevant topic on mobile and cross-platform applications, with T-frame stand you can have a frame, let's say inherited version of the frame, one per each platform, code against the superclass, and then there's an event on the T-frame stand component where you can actually override class selection at runtime, let's say according to the current device class the application is running on, and you can select the base class or one of its descendants to better match your user experience. So this is another feature in T-frame stand I've actually built because it is a very relevant question, Roland. So it's Yes. Feel free to use frames. Remember that FireUI support is limited into the IDE at design time, but then it will work at runtime if you can have an instance on your forms at design time. That's it. So thanks for watching, and feel free to leave a feedback somewhere on the training course or in this chat, and I'm always very happy to hear from you, and have a nice uh, don't miss the next week with Ian, and also the other weeks that with some very important speaker. I can name Kerry Jensen for the FireDuck week, and Olaf for the multi-threading and so on. So I really like this Delphi Community Edition Bootcamp. It's a great initiative. If you are new to Delphi, you will learn that it's a very powerful environment. If you are an experienced Delphi developer, you should be happy because it's an interesting time to be a Delphi developer with these unique cross-platform capabilities that your favorite development environment actually has. So thanks, and bye bye. See you next. Well, and thanks, Mike, for the support. Mike Swindell. Thanks a lot. Actually looking how to stop the streaming. Um, Let me check. Well, okay.